break apart now.
Next month, when he graduated, Wes would come back to Hillsboro, where he had made his home with his relatives, the Spencers. Jo-Beth worried about what would happen then. Will and Blakely, twin cousins his own age, had already gone to Raleigh to enlist. In spite of the warmth of the day, Jo-Beth shivered. She had a feeling of impending trouble, a kind of premonition. The bright day seemed to darken. Suddenly, even though surrounded by family, friends of a lifetime, she felt cut off from everyone else. All at once, Jo-Beth realized that she was the only one in the crowd not happily cheering. Chapter 1. After supper, Jo-Beth helped Annie, the Katie's elderly cook, in the kitchen, drying the dishes and putting away the silver, one of Jo-Beth's regular household chores. It wasn't until Jo-Beth went back upstairs to her bedroom that she had a chance to complete the letter she had started earlier. She was more aware than ever, from the evening's dinner table conversation, that war was now inevitable. Hillsboro was a hotbed of anti-Union sentiment. This was what Wes would be returning to in a few weeks. What would be his reaction? More to the point, how would they respond to his reaction? All his talk of brotherhood, settling differences peacefully, not taking up arms, all part of his Quaker grandmother's influence and his years at college in Philadelphia, was in direct opposition to what had been discussed among her relatives. Jo-Beth pulled her half-finished letter out from under the blotter on her desk and began to write. Everything here is talk of war. My uncles were here for supper, and the whole evening was spent in blaming President Lincoln for bringing about all this trouble. Uncle Madison kept pounding on the table and booming, "States' rights." Of course, Harville and Monroe agree. They say, if we're invaded, we'll defend ourselves. Would the president really send troops into North Carolina? Jo-Beth paused, thinking about what had led up to all this. All the previous fall and winter, Jo-Beth had witnessed the growing resentment against the government in Washington. Every Thursday evening, friends and associates of her Uncle Madison gathered at the Katie house. Before the country's present crisis, it had been an evening of convivial fellowship, friendly conversation, congenial company, sometimes a game or two of cards. More recently, it had become increasingly political. Often voices rose in not-so-gentlemanly confrontation. Most of the men present believed strongly not only in states' rights, but also in the Union, and roundly put down the idea of secession as seditious and not to be considered. The ladies of the house were never a part of the discussions, although they heard Madison's own opinions the next morning at breakfast. No one offered any comment. It would have been useless to do so, because naturally Uncle Madison never expected any difference to be voiced in his own household. However, Jo-Beth knew that Wes's views were almost directly opposed to her uncle's. This troubled her a great deal. She dipped her pen in the inkwell and started writing again. I wish you were here. All this would be so much easier if you were here to explain it to me. I miss you. I can't wait to see you. Jo-Beth hesitated. Her pen hovered uncertainly. How should she sign this? Would love be too bold? Although she did love Wesley and was pretty sure he loved her too, they had not said those words to each other, although they had nearly done so the day before he had left last Christmas. Jo-Beth wished she had some small piece of poetry or something she could send with her letter, as Wes sometimes did with his. She reached into the pigeonhole in the desk, brought out his last letter to her, and read the poem he had enclosed. Never seek to tell thy love, love that never told can be, for the gentle wind doth move silently, invisibly. Certainly that said something, she thought as she read it over. Through their correspondence this year, they had become much closer. It had been easier somehow to write about feelings than to speak about them. Jo-Beth tapped the end of the pen thoughtfully against her chin. Finally deciding that discretion was the better part of, she simply wrote, As ever, Jo-Beth. She sealed the letter and again slipped it under the blotter. She would take it herself.